Everyone, welcome here. I'm here today with Drew Hiles, Media and Technology Executive, now leading Pure Nodal as CEO. That's where he's building purpose-built digital infrastructure for AI and high-performance compute to deliver extreme speed, scalability, and cost control. He previously ran global commercial sales and business units at Veritone, the company behind the AIware operating system for enterprise AI, and was a founding senior executive of DMARC Broadcasting before its acquisition by Google, later serving in Google sales leadership and media partnerships. With 20 plus years in media, advertising, tech, and cloud solutions, Drew blends go-to-market chops, product vision, and partnership experience to help organizations monetize content, accelerate ML workflows, and scale compute-intensive innovation. So welcome, Drew. Thanks for joining us today.
Thank you, John. Great to be here.
Yeah.
Thanks for that introduction as well. That's a mouthful.
You can thank ChatGPT. They did a good job.
Oh, yeah. Boy,
Yep.
We all use that a lot these days.
Yes. So speaking of AI, we're interested in what you're doing over at Pure Nodal. I think it's very pertinent to sort of day-to-day news cycle of AI and scaling all these huge data centers. You hear like companies like Microsoft and Meta, buying up like all the capacity, right? They know that AI is going to grow and they're basically being proactive to buy up the capacity. So what you're doing at Pure Nodal is a little different than a traditional AWS and cloud systems. Maybe you can sort of explain how that works for us non-techie people.
Yeah, completely. I mean, it's hard to escape any kind of headline today about data centers and AI use cases, and robots are coming. And we were talking before this about how robots are going to be pouring coffee for us in 2 to 3 years in our homes, and what does that mean? But the reality is weird. This is the greatest technological revolution of my lifetime. I mean, you think about the way humans now are interacting with computers, both in the enterprise business level and in their personal lives, it's extraordinary. And so we need to embrace that. That's it's not going away. So how do we use it to our advantage, and how do we maximize that? And I think I'll take a step back before I get into Pure Nodal. And we started Veritone Inc. in 2014, which was the first AI operating system in the world. And it was back then in 2014. We actually IPO'd in 2016, but I ran global sales there and was one of the first three. I ran global sales for 11 years for that company. And so we were in deep. We were early AI use case. We started in media and entertainment. It was kind of our DNA, so it was real natural for us. We really knew all the workloads and workflow management, et cetera. But it was there I really learned that all of our big deals that we did, we had to have a handshake deal, or at least a working relationship with the hyperscalers, because all the AI was processed in the cloud, all the compute. And I started scratching my head and started looking at the future saying, wow, we're in the dial-up stage. We're in the first inning. And, clouds kind of have the keys to the castle. And so at that time, I really started thinking about, AWS built their cloud 15, 20 years ago. Same with Azure. Google's a little younger, but they weren't built for the future. They were built, for today, large behemoth buildings in the middle of Montana, with massive unsustainable power, water consumption. And I'm thinking, boy, we're just getting started. Just the exhaust data that's going to be peeling off these AI use cases, hyperscalers can't handle it now. They're talking about lighting up 3 Mile Island, to power, Microsoft Azure. And so I started thinking about what is kind of future proofing. What is the future of the data center? And kind of that's what we created at Pure Nodal. We have really built, the modern day blueprint for where the world is going with high performance compute, AI use case, compute, cloud service provider network. That's really what we built at Pure Nodal. And so really the big difference is, you look at the old cloud model, it's a real centralized model, right? Big buildings, Montana somewhere, and data has to travel to a centralized location for compute and then back to wherever the data is going. We took a different route. We really believe that decentralization is the key. A lot of little high performance compute pods or nodes, making up a giant network. Bringing the cloud to the data, not the data to the cloud, is really our um, mission. And we do that faster, greener, and more affordable than anybody in the world. And we're well on our way. We have a vision for how large we want to be. We're heads down building that decentralized network now. And then we built our own in-house software, proprietary software layer that lays on top of our decentralized cloud network that allows you to manage all your compute and your virtual machines and so on.
So how would you compare like performance wise? Because obviously we're talking a little bit about latency, right? We're going to have all these, we used to call it Internet of Things, but now we call it AI of Things, I guess, new term, right? There's going to be all these AI physical and digital bots that are working all over the place, and they all have latency, meaning it takes time for the information to go back and forth. So how does that improve using your model compared to traditional cloud, right? So the easiest way to compare this would be if you're playing a video game and your ping is too high, you try moving your character, it takes a while for him to move. So now with less latency, you're able to have better response, right? So just like those little robot butlers, you want them to be able to follow commands quickly and not just be sitting there like, oh, computing or thinking and
Exactly.
doing all the work, right?
Yeah. Well,
I can
so
imagine that's really important too for self-driving cars. Like Jesus, if you have latency, that can be the difference between slamming on the brakes or hitting the future car in front of you or something, right?
yeah, 100%. I mean, latency is a thing for sure, and it's going to be more of a thing. The more use cases, I think that, like I said, we're still in the first inning. I'll say dial up, but it's dating myself a little bit when I say dial up phase. But we're still in the first inning. And I think a lot of the use cases that are in play today, I mean, there are high performance compute use cases that don't require latency is not a thing, whether it's business intelligence or, you're trying to put some algorithms in your workflow around your accounting or that's not a thing. But when you're talking about live action, live events, you're talking about real time gaming or self driving cars or robots. I mean, the more that happens and the more that becomes ubiquitous and more companies are the cost comes down and more people are using more AI use cases, it is going to become a thing. And I actually think you can actually see almost like a data center puck in your pocket, you know, controlling all of your AI of things because latency is a thing. But I think from a performance standpoint, again, decentralized, you're all fully immersion. So the power savings is dramatic. It's 50% of any data center because all of our hardware is in liquid. So we can actually become more dense and put more performance and power in a pod than a normal data center. So as an example, one of our pods, which is about the size of your kitchen table, equal to about 10 racks of equipment in a normal data center. And we can put more GPUs on a card just because we don't need the air flowing between the GPU chips. So we can be a lot more dense, a lot more powerful in a smaller space. And we have 50% power, less power usage. So that savings can go on to the customer. Number one, zero water consumption because we're in liquid immersion. So we're not using water. We have a 90% smaller footprint than a normal data center because we're more dense in a pod. It takes us 45 days to deploy a unit rather than 12 to 36 months in a normal data center to stand up a air cooled scenario. And then because you can almost call it an AI factory pod because everything is contained in that pod, we're twice as fast. Meaning, if Amazon has 36,000 GPUs in the middle of Montana,
Yeah.
but all the data has to travel and get processed there and then travel back over the internet, who cares? Like, I would rather bring the cloud to the data and have a storage, CPU, memory, GPU processing right there. We're laser fast. Our tests show that we're less than 12 milliseconds, whereas a normal cloud is 30 to 45 milliseconds.
That's a big
Much
difference.
faster, much less water usage, less power. So that's some of the benchmarks around comparables.
How does it work though? I think with scalability and energy use, I think that seems to be the two big bottlenecks now is are we going to have enough chips to go around for all these data centers? And you as a smaller player here coming in against the big boys, I mean, they're
Yeah.
gobbling up all the chips, right? So how do you to work around that? I guess that could be a bottleneck. And also for power, I mean, I think that's just a general issue for everybody. We just don't have enough nuclear power plants coming online. They're talking about small reactors that they're going to be building. I think even some of the corporations are looking at buying mini reactors just for their data center to make sure that they have stable power, right? That there's no downtime.
Yeah, crazy.
So like, I guess all that seems to be the infrastructure issue for being able to scale this, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you talk about being off the grid too, and I'll get back to your question, but you talk about oil and gas or fracking, creating that power in that data center is one thing, but when you're in the middle of a field and you need AI to compute and use high performance compute to say, where does the drill go next? Because time is money in that situation. Even having a sustainable power in the a decentralized pod in the middle that can travel is a big deal. I agree. So power is a big deal. We are extremely low power. I mean, a basic refrigerator in a grocery store can power a pod. It's about 350 kilowatts, which is really low for those of you who know power. But we fly into the radar of a data center too, because we're not gobbling up power. So we can actually go in the corner of your basement in an office building and plug it into a wall virtually, you know, just about, or take over an older grocery store. And so there, be in a stadium and plug it into the wall. I mean, that's kind of the power we're talking about. So it's a Ferrari in extremely low power because of our liquid immersion. The chips is it? Yeah, that's super huge headlines right now. I mean, Nvidia, man. But I would also say that, Meta and everybody else is developing their own chips. So I think there's a little bit of a competitive balance out there that everybody's trying to pay attention to. There are enough chips out there. There are so many resellers. We get calls all the time. When the H200s came out, they couldn't get rid of the H100s. And it's almost like your TV. You're at K, you bought an 8K TV. There's no way. They're not even shooting shows in 8K. Why would
Yeah,
you need an
they're way too
H200 or a
expensive still.
yeah, yeah. So I'm not worried about the chip thing because we know that we can get as hold as many as we want. Ton of resellers out there selling chips that don't want to turn them back in because they want to be a supplier to an NVIDIA. So they will call us and say, hey, we'll, sell them to you at half price. Just make sure we clear so that we're in good standing with NVIDIA. So we've never had a problem with chips. Like I said, we can deploy a pod in 45 days. And you're talking about a high performance compute AI factory pod in 45 days, and the chips aren't the problem.
Makes sense. And the way you explain it too is helpful. I mean, the fact that they're self-contained units is pretty awesome, right? So you did mention, that you guys were doing some fundraising and whatnot, but how has it been on the VC PE side of things? I know you're in California. Like, from what we've seen, it seems like money was frozen for quite some time. Silicon Bank, all the scandals and that kind of thing, and that we had heard that, like, I think 50% of VCs hadn't wrote a check in like almost a year. It was ridiculous. Like, money was
Mhm.
tightened up. Are you seeing things change that way? What would you say on the VC side? Like, is it just harder to get funding, or what would be the main challenges right now?
Yeah, no, I think that, it's such an attractive space. I think everybody's kind of trying to figure out how do I at least get into this? And so we really haven't had that problem. I mean, the market has slowed, there's no question. So, we're battling those normal, headwinds. But as far as, I'd rather be in this sector that's going to be, completely vertical over the next 5 years than some of the other sectors out there. So, we're not seeing that. Everybody seems to be super excited about what we're doing. We actually are heads down building a cloud services network. So distributed pod network around the US. We're starting in the US. A software layer on top of it, similar to an AWS. You go on and create your virtual machines and your workloads and your storage. But also the network piece for us is super important. We actually connect all of our pods via our own dark fiber. So we're not using the public internet. We actually control our own superhighway. So we don't charge egress fees or ingress fees or anything like that. And we're faster. That's a big demand and that's growing. The other demand that we haven't, because we have a small team that we haven't leaned into, that we're being being forced into, is selling our pods. Data centers that want to retrofit for an AI factory or they built their data center 10 years ago or colo, but they're seeing a demand of high performance compute. It takes a lot of money to retrofit one of those to change it. We can go set up a pod with low consumption, low energy, super high performance compute AI use case very quickly. So we're seeing a pretty big demand on literally just setting up an immersion, high performance compute, AI factory pod globally. We're talking to companies in Italy and Singapore and
Nice.
Saudi Arabia and the US. And so we're kind of being pulled into that area and it's hard to ignore.
Yeah, no, definitely a lot of momentum in the space. It seems like there's a new AI startup. It's funny in our meetings with our team here. Every week, I have a new tool that we got to check out. I'm like, oh, try this new tool, this new AI tool. And for the most part, a lot of these tools are things you can kind of create yourself using, advanced AI models and whatnot. Create your own bots and so on. But it seems now we're starting to see new technology that's maybe a little bit more innovative, right? And they're going to want to use sort of like scientific workloads and things like that. And I think that's also where your niche market is, right? Like being able to do those high end compute kind of things. So who would be your like ideal customer
Exactly.
for that? Who's doing
Yeah.
this kind of work?
No, I think you nailed it. I mean, we're not going to go displace AWS for normal storage and compute, but the reality is all the growth is happening in the cloud, in the high performance, the AI use cases, Gen AI use cases. That's where we're focused. Anybody who wants to try new workloads that candidly are cost prohibitive on some of the hyper clouds. If you're talking about a media company that they want to train all their own content on a large language model every day for better ad targeting or for better content curation, that's an expensive proposition in a hyper cloud. And so you're seeing even big media companies maybe not do that. Well, for us, it's affordable, right? It's actually, we make it affordable to do that. So I think the good thing for us is we're focused on new workloads, high performance compute, AI workloads, AI factory. I guess I would just call that umbrella, not trying to displace what AWS is doing, but we're focused on the growth area. The other thing as I was going to touch on is I think when I say we're in the first inning, even big enterprise companies are still dipping their toe into this. Like, there's a lot of talk about it. A good place to start is customer service with chatbots and synthetic voice and digital humans, but they're just scratching the surface. I think we're going to see hundreds and hundreds of new use cases, and it's going to trickle down to the small and medium businesses, which it's not right now, but it needs to be affordable. And so part of our model is we make it affordable. We don't have the energy costs, we don't have the water consumption, we don't have the egress or ingress fees. And we're also working on things on our software to make it easy. Hit the easy button to use AI use cases too. We think that that'll be a game changer, but that's maybe for the next podcast.
Oh, I totally get that. And I was going to mention, have you already started selling your product, or is it more of people are coming to you asking to try it out? Like, what sort of stage are you at right now?
Both. So we don't have a large team, but we have done, we've created some channel partners. That's part of our strategy is selling through partners. We've created a pretty powerful relationship with Backblaze, which is if you're familiar with Backblaze, they're a storage company. They have over 600,000 customers with a lot of data in storage, but they don't offer compute. So we've done some integrations with Backblaze where Backblaze customers can actually use Pure Nodal for compute use cases. They don't have to move that data to an AWS anymore to do it. So Backblaze, the data stays with Backblaze. We are integrated with Backblaze. So we've done partnerships like that have really helped us. We do have a very small targeted enterprise team that are focused on some of the big enterprises like a NASCAR, the NFL. So a little of both. But we're
Yeah, so
small and just
I was
getting
going to ask
started.
you about sort of how do you structure sales teams? Because I know you've been in global sales for a long time, right? And I was like, well, are the channel people also doing the enterprise? You have it segmented. Thoughts on like you're scaling a team. What your thought would be in terms of how you're going to build up the departments? Because I'm like, okay, typically the channel guys are a little bit different with what their skill sets are, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I'm a big channel guy. I think it's a very quick way if it's done right and you pick the right partners, very quick way to scale your sales effort. And if you're a small team, and we saw some opportunities in a couple of the big verticals to go do some partnership deals with, one or two or three of the biggest channel partners if the product fit is right. So we kind of heads down. That was our first go to. But clearly we want we want to build an enterprise field sales team, an inside sales team, obviously lead gen team. We kind of want to lay that in, but we opted to start with a channel first strategy,
Makes
and
sense.
so far it's going pretty well.
Well, a couple
Well
couple
as
big
as
deals is all you need, right?
exactly. But as you are with most channel partners, you're not the only one they're dealing with. So you got to compete for share of mind with them and share of voice. And you don't have any control over the sales process. It's pretty much their salespeople. So I mean, there are benefits and drawbacks to the channel, which is why it's always good to have an enterprise team of your own.
Yeah, no, I can appreciate that. And so with your team, when you're bringing people on in the beginning, I mean, how did you set quota for people? You know, when it's a new product and you're like, how do you set the quota and how did you set your goals or KPIs for your team? Like, how'd you do that?
Well, yeah, I mean that's a good question. So first of all, when you're working for a lot of startups are, I call them high wire acts, right? They're not for the faint of heart. It's not like working for Google, or it's not like working for a big hyperscaler. It's gritty and it's fast paced, and you wear a lot of hats, and you're part of building it, and that's kind of where we are. But I think in general, we looked at the capacity of our pods. What is total compute capacity, and what would be market pricing on that, and then what is our pricing on that, and then setting goals around sellout and account-based goals and kind of started off that way.
Yeah, I guess it depends on your goal, whether it's like just getting adoption and being a loss leader for the first couple of years to just get enough users, or what is sort of the channel strategy or the sales strategy that you want to be using, right? So always
Yeah, like
interested from hearing from founders how they're going about building their little empire, right? It's like you have to kind of in the beginning, same with commissions, right? Like offering incentives or higher base salary for founding salespeople. We've seen a lot of our placements like that with new companies where they're hiring their first salesperson. They're like, okay, we got to pay a high base because there's also the risk for that person to come over. They don't know what the commissions will look like, right? It's hard to gauge what you're going to be
extremely
paying.
variable.
Yeah,
Yeah, like
exactly.
so we hired a channel kind of manager to manage the channel, but our first go around with Backblaze was free compute for their customers. So the salesperson was like, well, wait a minute. But yeah, you're right. There's about foundation building. A lot of times you're planting the seeds ahead of time, and we're listening to the market. I mean, clearly we want to know what's working, what's not, what's the desire, what's the appetite. But we'll tend to ratchet and formalize all those compensation programs as we get more mature.
Yeah, totally understandable. And it totally makes sense. I mean, I've seen for some companies every year they change the comp plan. Now, as a salesperson, that was like frustrating because you're like, your mindset was every year they're just trying to pay us less. So it's like keeping your people happy while making the right decisions for the business is always a bit of a rub. And you just got to really making sure you're treating people fairly, I think is the biggest thing. There's other incentives like long-term incentive plans and, you know, uh, even equity potentially for some people, maybe it would be always a nice little
That's a
carrot.
big piece. Honestly, that's a big piece with startups. I mean, you don't come to a startup for a salary. You come for equity, you come for the big ring to grab. But the more you mature, the more sales channels you develop internally at a company too. I remember when we started with Veritone, we didn't have a huge pro serve division. We didn't charge a lot for customer success. We just wanted to get clients in and then take care of them, wrap our arms around them. But over time, you start charging for some of those elements, and you start charging for pro serve, which allows salespeople to expand the more depth of contact you get at a company, an enterprise company, the more opportunities open up. And if you're asking the right questions and you're the right resource and we're solving more problems, you're going to make more money as a rep. Came up through sales, so I'm super sensitive to making sure we're always providing more and more opportunities for our salespeople.
Well, and it's funny because like initially you may be racing for customers, but then at some point you do have to like think, okay, dollars per customer, retention of customer base, growing the customer base, doing all three things correctly. Because if any of the buckets have holes in them, you're going to have leakage, and it's the cost of acquisition now has gone higher. And we've seen too with a lot of marketing efforts, just a lot of things are not working like they used to, right? Like Google Ads, deliverability of
Yeah,
email, all sorts of things have become harder and harder because the amount of AI spam we're seeing. I don't know about you, but my LinkedIn gets bombarded every week with I don't know
yeah,
how many AI bots now. It's insane.
yeah. It's alarming. Actually, a friend of mine started a company and they're doing lead gen campaigns where the bots are actually scrubbing the websites and the LinkedIn and these targeted emails are really good. I mean, it's crazy. So yeah, it's pretty impressive.
What's your thoughts on the, sort of the future when we're hearing, AGI is going to be only a few years away and quantum computing and all this? I mean, do you think it's farther off than they're saying, or are
No,
we're on track?
we're on track. I mean, it's happening fast. I mean, it's funny. I was just saying to my wife the other day, you remember those videos, even last year, of an AI video was all kind of weird mixed mashed mouth going over here. And you look at it today, and that's just a year how fast things are moving. So, no, I think we're headed down the road pretty quickly. It's funny. You're starting to see, and I think it's smart, you're starting to see whether it's chief AI officer roles at big enterprise companies or, just somebody over how do we maximize our business by looking at AI use cases to increase productivity and workflow and ROI in every department in our company. And you're starting to see those roles develop. And I it's super smart. I mean, there's so many tools out there today. Everybody's so scared about taking jobs, but I think there's going to be so many jobs created. I mean, if you talk about somebody who's in the weeds, they're in the loop doing their job. But if we can apply AI to get them on the loop just to monitor what's going on, there'll be more productivity and there might be other things coming off of that. So I think it's happening fast and I think it's a lot of good's going to happen before maybe some bad happens.
We hope so, that's for sure. I mean, I've seen way too many sci-fi movies to
Yeah.
have not a little bit of a caution with the technology, right?
No, I listen, I think with cancer, with healthcare, I think there's so much good. We need AI to help us solve some of these complex diseases and complex problems that we just can't do. And so, yeah, I think we're going to see a lot of really, really great benefit before any sci-fi movies happen.
Yeah, that'd be pretty cool. There's a lot of diseases that, well, that what the top killers are, right? So if we can
Mm,
find a cure, that'd be huge, right?
absolutely.
What would you say to new people sort of, either looking to change their career or just entering the workforce when it comes to AI, like in the future? Like, how would you position yourself right now? It seems like, or even just joining a startup, what advice would you have for someone looking to do that?
I would say always be curious about everything is a super big trait I look for. Are you curious, willing to try new things, use every tool out there, experiment, try integrating every single AI tool into your life. You'll see what works, what doesn't work. And I think you'll see things bubble up that you get attracted to and say, wow, starting to see a passion for this. And then I would go heads down and row that boat hard to get involved in that, whether it's coding or marketing of, digital human or, whatever it might be. But I would say be curious and try lots of things right now because it's happening fast and new tools are coming out every single day.
Yeah, that'll make sense. Being sort of a lifelong educate, being always wanting to learn and progress, continuous improvement, I think is always a good thing to be doing, right? So
Yeah,
I know I'm
totally.
learning something every day with these AI tools. It's crazy just the amount. We actually tried out an AI SDR the other day as a demo. There's PiperX, and we tried them out, and it'll engage with you on a website. It'll do all these things. It was pretty impressive, and even the voice now is becoming less robotic, or you can still tell the difference, I think, but it's getting to the point where you almost can't. And I'm pretty sure that I've been cold called by a couple of AI bots. I'm 100% it
Yeah,
was not a human.
probably. Yeah,
So, I mean, it's funny how, like, they say right now, whatever you see is the worst it'll ever be, meaning it's only going to improve from where it's at. So, I think
exactly
as
right.
humans, we got to also take the same approach of like, keep improving yourself because everything around us is changing so fast. How do you keep up with it? Right.
Yeah, that's
So,
exactly right. It's funny you mentioned the voice thing. The early days of Veritone, we were one of the first to dabble in synthetic voice. And so,
how far
we
back
had
was that? Like, when did you
two,
start doing
2000, I believe 2018, 19.
that's not that far back?
Yeah, I know. You think about how far it's come. Might have been 2017. We were certainly working with Microsoft and a couple of others, but there weren't a lot out there. And it's just improved so much, whether it's translation, real timeness, editing capability, just sound, tonality, happiness, sadness, all those kind of features you don't think about. Before it was just kind of like one way street, man, just monotone kind of thing, and now it's pretty
Well,
elaborate,
the
complex.
scary thing is there's been cases where there's been engineer candidates that have applied for companies and have interviewed, and the person that interviewed, like the interviewee, was actually a bot. Like they've actually sent bots to do interviews for jobs because the person didn't think they could get the job or they're overseas, and so they send a bot to do the interview with you. You think you're talking to a human, and it's not. I mean, that's pretty scary that you have to actually do a human check, verify you're a human before I interview you now.
Well,
That's
I mean, it's
absolutely
pretty
wild.
common in HR tech and HR, AI companies to do those first pass in a digital human or synthetic because they're looking for certain traits and certain buzz commonalities of categories, and it's more productive to do it via, a chatbot. And that's just kind of one way to make yourself more productive. You can actually go through more candidates quicker. Yeah. So, you think the world's fast now. Just
Well,
wait.
we've heard a little bit about that, and obviously being in recruitment, we think about that, like, are we going to get replaced? But I think our let's say our niche or our go to market strategy now is being the not AI company, because we're like it's about human connections, it's about
Yeah.
relationships, especially at the executive level that we're recruiting for now. If you're hiring like an admin assistant or like a Walmart cashier, using an AI bot to interview the candidates, that kind of makes sense because it's pretty entry level. There's basic questions like, will you show up to work on time? How do you feel about
Right.
reliability? Like you're doing basic screening. AI can do it, but I think when you get to the leadership level, it's there's a lot of you got to also check their executive presence. I think is a big part for hiring executives, and a lot of times you got to have that face to face to really see are the gears turning, and do they have that kind of presence with you. It's crazy how things are changing, but I mean,
I agree with you on all of that for sure.
view it as right now I view it as like a force multiplier for people. Like I use AI to record meeting notes, I can use AI to help me craft my messaging and so on, AI to do research on companies and candidates and all that, but it's not going to replace those main the main face to
Yeah.
face kind of focus.
Agree.
I'm hoping that we're going to see that companies are using it as a tool rather than just trying to eliminate workforce and chopping headcount, which seems to
Yeah.
be kind of happening on a slow roll with some companies. I mean, there's been a lot of cuts this year, right?
Yeah. I mean, I agree with you. I think that's the wrong way to think about it.
Yeah.
I mean, how can you use it to enhance and to hyperspeed, to double, triple what you're doing, not cut, head count or bodies.
Yeah, we'll have to see how this all plays out, I guess. But I really appreciate hearing a little bit about what you guys are doing, and I think it's definitely very interesting. And there's got to be more than one way to do it, right? And I think that's where having options as a consumer is great, because there's definitely a monopoly with those big cloud providers. So I'm
For
always
sure.
for the underdog to get in there and disrupt the
Yeah.
industry. That's
Thank
great.
you. Thank you. It's been a pleasure, John. Thank you very much.
Yeah, appreciate it.
Yep.